Hi, I'm Ryan Jeroski with Greater Valley Forge TMA, here today with Gene Krack, the Borough Manager of Phoenixville. Gene, thank you very much for making time for us today. Here to talk about Phoenixville streetscape projects. In January of 2011, Phoenixville was awarded $598,000 through the Pennsylvania Community Transportation Initiative to fund the next stages of their streetscape projects. Gene, thank you again for making time. We're going to talk a bit about the history of streetscapes in Phoenixville. Sure. Talk about where we were before this grant, what's been planned, what's been done, where you are today.
Well, there's a lot of folks that are involved before my time here. I've only been here just shy of 3 years, but the streetscapes goes back to probably before 2003 in design and thought process, but in essence, the real construction piece of the first phase of this began in 2003, and 2005 another segment I think was completed. We were rolling forward up until about 2007, and then there was a whole design element centered around ADA accessibility, how the sidewalks transitioned to the street. And that became a problem because there was some design flaws according to PennDOT, and when you're using federal money, you have to follow the design specifications, the most recent design specifications. And we literally have been 2.5 to 3 years of trying to get through those design specifications. All the while, the money that you've gotten in advance from years back, those funds are hardlined. In other words, if it's $1 million, it's $1 million. And you got to keep in mind when you do these things, the streetscapes itself had an application that was based on a dollar amount at that time. So then you come forward 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, and things hardly ever go backwards down. So you find yourself having to go after additional grants to try and make up the lost dollars that are used for construction costs, and that's what the PCTI was a component of.
And you mentioned those additional grants. A lot of times for these locally implemented projects, what you have to do is cobble funding together from various funding sources.
Absolutely.
Could you talk a bit about that process and sort of where other channels of funding outside of PCTI that the borough has pursued?
Well, the first phase was a combination of county funding under their community reinvestment program. I think they call it the 21st Century Funding. The county commissioners targeted specifically to the boroughs and the city of Coatesville in Chester County. And so my predecessors, the folks that were here before me, had reached out and submitted applications and got some funding to get the initial phases of streetscapes. If you were here prior to 2001 timeframe, it just wasn't a pretty downtown. It was an old downtown. But it didn't have a vibrant life to it. Very old trees, unkept trees, very old architecture in the form of, if there were trash containers, they were more like barrels than they were receptacles. The street lamps and things like that all rusted and just deteriorated properties. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Those fundings began with the county. Morphed into the ability to get what a lot of people are frustrated with these days called earmarks, but they were a mechanism that our legislators had available to dole out to various communities to help them move forward, because we all know that the municipalities, you can't do a lot of projects just off of the tax base. It's practically impossible. So my predecessors were able to go out and get a couple earmarks, each at about $1 million, to take streetscapes to the next couple of phases. And then we got hung up in the issue of the design element. And as I said, the costs continue to escalate, so we reach out again to other funders such as the PCTI grant and actually the county, and one more earmark, a small earmark of about $250,000, small by comparison to earmarks. So those were all put together over about a 5-year period of time. We're still waiting to move the design element forward, but we were able to, like I said, cobble together all of these funding pieces to take us to the next step now that we're ready to go. And we think we have the final design. We think we're in front of PennDOT, ready to go.
So what now with the funding you have now, and specifically the funding from PCTI, the $598,000 you received from PCTI, what is the next phase of the streetscapes? What's the scope from where to where, and also what are these streetscapes going to look like? I know there's obviously lighting, receptacles, potentially benches. Just talk a bit about that as well.
Well, streetscapes from our perspective is Bridge Street from essentially Star Street on the eastern end, all the way out to Route 23 or Nut Road on the western end. And in that, there's a component of Main Street to the south and Gay Street to the south, and then Church from Main back to Bridge. So we sort of create a whole block component there, and it's a combination of a lot of things. It's brickwork in the core downtown where we have brick sidewalks and transitioning to concrete ADA ramps. And then after we go beyond Gay Street, the sidewalks become concrete again. It's very costly to do brickwork. It looks really good and works really well with buildings. But as we transition from Gay Street west to Nut, there's less and less store frontage and that walkable component. So it's not necessary to spend all those dollars in brickwork. We can go back to good concrete, good white sidewalks. We will keep the essence of the pedestrian lamps, the street lamps, all of those things will continue to look as they do currently on Bridge Street. And included in those are the amenities of trash receptacles, recycling receptacles, benches, and the like. And then there's a component of straightening out a little bit of a tough area where Buchanan runs into Bridge Street. We want to, currently it just sort of really opens up into a very wide no man's land, and we're going to use a detail of concrete and brick to create sort of a little island to channelize cars correctly. Included in that is gateway, wayfinding. Those are things that we're addressing literally as we speak.
Oh, great. What's your timeline to get this out to construction and for construction to be completed?
My timeline
in an ideal world, of course.
In an ideal world, we'd already be started, but the realities are there's various clearances, utility clearances, environmental clearances that you have to get past. I would say that if council approves the proposal to finish out the remaining aspects of design, to put all of the pieces into place, we're probably looking somewhere around August timeframe of clearing most of those hurdles. And it's plausible that we could be in front of the bidding process sometime in the late fall. But realistically, we want to get as much of this done this year as we can through the design element. The nice thing about streetscapes is, unlike many construction projects, you're not restricted by weather as much as you are in other projects. So there's a lot that can be done over the winter. So once we get to the bid process and we award the contracts, work can begin even in as late as December.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, we were talking before this video, you have a great history in economic development. You were involved with Chambers of Commerce in California. You served as executive director, and you were involved with economic development think tanks in Delaware County. What have you seen as streetscapes? What's their economic development impact? How do they attract businesses to your community, help you retain businesses? Can you talk?
It's my background. I had a 20-year career in the military and traveled around the world and saw a lot of things that happen in communities all over the world. And then when I transitioned into this world of economic development, now municipal management, what I've realized is that the walkability of a community, the nature of people going from place to place to place, is what drives one of the factors that drives the downtown economy. And as the downtown is vibrant and alive, the community is brought up in that same tide, so that your outlying areas, your real estate values go up. the livability of the community goes up. So there's a direct correlation to what happens when you take something like the streetscapes and turn it around and make it a place where people want to come to, and they want to walk and get out of cars, walk around, go to restaurants, go to stores, and what have you. There is an absolute direct correlation. People feel comfortable, and that's what streetscapes does. It makes you feel comfortable.
Gene, thank you so much for having time for us today.
You're
Best
welcome.
of luck on the streetscape project, and
Thank
as
you.
always, anything we can do to help you.
Anything I can do.
Let me know.
Great, thanks.
Take care.